Greetings, back with another one. Excuse me. Throughout my years, being in grade school, I would hear about, the Buffalo Soldiers. History class was always my favorite class. Just learning about history of not just our country, but the world history and stuff like that. And I was just so fascinated about it. I've always been a history buff myself. Anything that I can learn, whether it was, culture or geographics or all of the ancient traditions and rituals and battles and stuff throughout history. I was just always fascinated about all that stuff, and I can remember back in what was it, junior high school. I had a teacher by the name of Mr. Felice, Mr. John Felice. Hope he's doing okay. He was just such a very inspiring teacher. He would just keep you out of your seat. With just when he was teaching, it was just the way he would convey and how he projected. It was very much like a performance the way he did it, but you can tell that he was very passionate on what he did. And I remember him talking about the Buffalo Soldiers and stuff like that. And like this is back in junior high, so this was quite some time ago. But I do remember it, and I kind of sometimes when you learn stuff in grade school, it kind of leaves you a little bit. I mean, you always kind of have that memory in the back of your mind when you were learning all this stuff, but a lot of that stuff doesn't stick with you, especially, when the concept of work and bills are introduced. That's all you worry about is just, keeping the bills paid and stuff like that. But I just wanted to, I'm on the Buffalo Soldier National Museum page, and I just want to just, kind of like recap and go over who are the Buffalo Soldiers and their contributions to our military service and stuff like that. And a lot of these guys served proudly, and I just really wanted to give it like a little history. And like I said, this is kind of a refresher course for me as well too, because I forgot a lot about their contributions. I always knew who they were, but I just wanted to go into a little bit of detail and some history into who they were. Currently my brother, he's serving in the U.S. Navy, and he's coming up on his retirement pretty soon. But I think he's going to be in Korea, and then he'll be done. But yeah, but he's been serving. I mean, right after high school, so probably it's well over 15 years now he's been serving. So, and I'm proud of him. I wanted to serve myself. I wanted to be a Marine. Just didn't score high enough on the ASVAB, and then I tried to go back into being the National Guard, and that didn't pan out as well. But I've always kind of been a very patriotic guy, and I do, I know that I am very fortunate to be born an American, despite what all the stuff that's going on now and stuff like that. But it is what it is, man. So I just think that the people who realize the sacrifices that were made by the brave men and women in uniform and what they did. And you go back to just learning about World War II and all that stuff, and you had people who were just this willingness to fight and stuff like that. And you had people who were as young as 19 years old. And I just think that generation should always be remembered, because it really was a sacrifice. I mean, you had these people who were just you know babies essentially, man. I mean, 18, 19 years old, just doing what they did, man, just to make sure that our stars and stripes stay afloat. So I mean, it's just my way of just thanking them is just being appreciative of what I have today as an American. I'm lucky, and I know that I am. But it says, who are the Buffalo Soldiers? It says African American soldiers who have served proudly in every great American war. These fighting men represented the first black professional soldiers in peacetime army. The recruits came from varied backgrounds, including former slaves and veterans for service in Civil War. And these are the cavalries, the Ninth Cavalry, the 10th Cavalry, the 24th Infantry Regiment, and the 25th Infantry Regiment. And I won't play the little video here, but it says in 1866, through an act of Congress, legislation was adopted to create 6 all African American Army units. The units were identified as the 9th and 10th Cavalry and the 38th, 39th, 40th, and 41st Infantry Regiments. In 1869, the 4th Infantry Regiments were recognized to form the 24th and 25th Infantry Regiments. So how did the Buffalo Soldiers get their name? I was always kind of wondering that too. I remember hearing something that was, I guess it had something to do with the guys who served. I heard it was something like had something to do with their hair, like their hair kind of resembled the buffalo or the curls. I don't know. That's what I heard. I don't know how true it is, but it says here on the site, it says, throughout the era of the Indian Wars, approximately 20% of the U.S. cavalry troops were black, and they fought over 177 engagements. Wow. The combat prowess, bravery, tenaciousness, and looks on the battlefield inspired the Indians to call them Buffalo Soldiers. The name symbolized the Native Americans' respect for the Buffalo Soldiers' bravery and valor. Buffalo Soldiers down through the years have worn the name with pride. So they were given, based on this, it was given to them by the tribal Americans fighting all those wars and stuff like that. So, and because the tribal Americans, they are very, very heavily spiritual, and when it comes to, and I want to get into that culture as well. Now, I've always been fascinated with the tribal Americans and stuff like that. Native Americans, whatever you like to call them. I consider myself a Native American. I was born here, right? But they are very, very, very spiritual people, and just their culture, when you really dig down deep into it, it's very, very fascinating. It kind of comes and goes, but you really have to kind of really have an interest in it. And I've always kind of had an interest in the Native Americans, all that stuff, and just learning about and just the rituals. Like I said, the rituals and culture. I'm very, very interested in just a multitudes of different cultures around the world. And the tribal Americans were very interesting to me. Growing up in Virginia, I believe the dominant tribes were Monacan, Matoaka, Powhatan. I believe the Cherokees were one of the dominant tribes as well. But I grew up in south side of Chesterfield County, and there's a county right next to it. It's called a town. It's called Powhatan. And I guess that was one of the reservations, but it's called Powhatan, and then you have a Matoaka High School, a Monacan High School down there in Virginia. So it's very fascinating. But proceed. The Western expansion. The African Americans have fought in the military conflict since colonial days. However, the Buffalo Soldiers, comprised of former slaves, freemen, and black Civil War soldiers, were the first to serve during peacetime. Once the westward movement had begun, prominent among those blazing treacherous trails in the Wild West were the Buffalo Soldiers of the U.S. Army. These African Americans were charged with responsibility for escorting settlers, cattle, herds, and railroad crews. The 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiments also conducted campaigns against American Indian tribes on the western frontier that extended from Montana in the northwest to Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona in the southwest. And that's just, I mean, given the fact that way that we travel today, back in those times, man, it must have been hell to trek, going through, desert land, the mountainous regions, and whether it was hot outside or it was cold outside. You're really fighting. You're really having a battle against the elements, and it's in its own right. So just the trekking and just very arduous march, going from place to place, and just it's unbelievable. And that's why I come back to this time a lot, just to knowing the how easy we have it today compared to back then. That's why I really, really feel fortunate, because these guys did all the stuff that they pretty much laid their lives and put their bodies through just a lot. And I thank them every day, man, from a standpoint of just what they had to go through, put their bodies through. Food was probably scarce, probably. The medical conditions, in terms of the knowledge that we have in medicine today, it was obviously they didn't have that knowledge back then. So I mean, just walking around those towns and those mountains and the deserts and stuff like that, through all that brush. I'm pretty sure disease was probably just being able to contract something. It must have been rough. It had to have been rough. All the knowledge that we have today, they didn't have back then. So I mean, it's quite you know it's quite crazy when you really narrow it down and think about it in that context of just terms of just well-being. And it says the Buffalo Soldiers have played a major role in nearly all major American wars. So it's the American Civil War. It says oh, they got these little tags. It said the American Civil War, the Spanish American War, the Philippine Insurrection. I don't even. That's crazy. Oh, is it a black regiment who had served in Cuba during the Spanish American War? See, so I didn't know that. That's wild. The Mexican expedition. Yeah, I know that one. And it says World War I, of course, World War II, of course, and the Korean police action. All through President Harry Truman had ordered the end of the racial segregation in the military. Wow. I mean, yeah. I mean, the contributions are just endless. It seems, man. I mean, yeah. It's so much that I didn't know. I mean, I was learning all this stuff in school, but as you know, when you're in grade school, you don't stay on one particular event too long. You move on from. I mean, you pretty much go through the timeline, but you don't. The way the textbooks were formatted and stuff like that. You're only one on an event. For a certain amount of time, and then you move on and stuff. It says the formation of the first African American service unit. It says the Buffalo Soldiers National Museum exists to tell the real, unapologetic truth of the sacrifices that the African Americans made to build the United States of America. At BSNM, or Buffalo Soldiers National Museum, I guess that's what that stands for. We aspire to continue sharing the stories that shape the narrative of American history. And it says the 9th Cavalry constitutes on July 28, 1866, the regular army as the 9th Cavalry, and organized September 21st, 1866 in Greenville, Louisiana, I guess. The Buffalo Soldiers of the 9th Cavalry served selflessly and dedicatedly through the settling of the great American frontier. The unit saw constant held duty from 1866 to 1890, protecting travelers and forces throughout the South and the West and West Texas. Down to the 10th Cavalry, constituted on July 28, 1866, in the regular army as the 10th Cavalry, and organized September 21st, 1866, at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. The 10th Cavalry Buffalo Soldiers served for over 2 decades of continuous deployment on the Great Plains and in Arizona and New Mexico. The regiment distinguished itself during the Spanish-American War at Santiago. It lost. It's cut off right there, but like I said, I don't want to drone on but too long. I just want to just refreshing your memory, because hopefully some of you out there may be fascinated and want to dig deep and go into a rabbit hole about the Buffalo Soldiers yourself. So this is just a refresher course, just to let you know their contributions and everything that they went through. It says the 24th and 25th Infantry Regiments. The 24th Infantry Regiment was organized in 1869 after consolidation of 2 other black units, 38th and 41st Infantry Regiments. For more than 20 years, the unit occupied military posts in the Southwest protection in maintaining peace on the turbulent frontier. In addition to battle engagements, the members of the regiment built roads, guarded stage, and I'm sure it goes down. And this was the uniform of Buffalo Soldiers. I believe that's like a navy blue with the yellow. Buffalo Soldiers often received secondhand uniforms, the poorest quality horses, and the worst equipment. Hoover over the icons on the uniform and read more about the articles of clothing and equipment that they wore. And yeah, man, here's all the context if you want to get in touch with and I believe they're stationed in Houston, Texas, I believe. And it's a closed until summer 2026, so they'll reopen this summer. And the holiday closers, the Buffalo. So you got the events, exhibits, memberships, venue, rental. And yeah, man. I mean, this is the official website of the Buffalo Soldiers National Museum. And yeah, man, I just wanted to touch on this, man, because I think this is very important. And I remember Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, arguably the greatest basketball player ever. He hosted a special. It was talking about I believe it was called the Black Patriots. I believe. I never saw it, but I remember him talking about it, and I do want to go back and catch that somewhere. I'm sure I can find it on the web somewhere. But yeah, man, I remember the days of Crispus Attucks and stuff like that. I mean, we've always had black patriots. We've always had them. And this is why I'm so thankful, man, because of what these men did, and it wasn't, and I'm sure there was a lot of turbulence in terms of, racial issues and stuff like that. But obviously all of them didn't feel that way. And I remember reading about Alexander Hamilton, the guy who's on our $10 bill. He was the first Secretary of Treasury. And he was corresponding with George Washington, General Washington, and he was saying something along the lines. He said he felt that it was that blacks were best served. They would have been better served that they would have served in the military alongside their Caucasian constituents. That's what he was talking about. And General Washington, here's the thing: a lot of people don't understand our history. A lot of people believe that during the slave trade and all that stuff, during the slave times, is that it was just that everybody felt that way. I mean, you look at you go back and you learn about George Washington's life and stuff. He was freed a lot of slaves and stuff like that too. I mean, yeah, he owned them and stuff like that, but because slavery was so ingrained in the culture at that time, that's just what it was. I mean, and a lot of people were saying that they were stolen from Africa. No, they weren't stolen from Africa. They were slaves in Africa too, and Africans sold them to the settlers, and that's how all that. And they went to other places. They went to North America. They went to South America. They went to the Caribbean and stuff like that. So it's important to really know our history and not to just glaze over and say, oh, just because slavery was around, that everybody felt this way. That was the thing. The door was always open. I mean, they were talking about this. When the nation was founded in 1776, there was always people touching on this stuff. And when you read about Abe Lincoln and his friend Henry Clay and all that stuff, there was a lot of Caucasian people who weren't for slavery, but because what they were doing in other states was so the norm. That's just what it was. But there was always people who were against it and stuff like that. And a lot of these people who and just like they were saying that there were. I mean, a lot of people don't know there was actually some blacks who owned slaves in America too. A lot of people don't know that there were some free blacks who owned slaves in America. And one of the first slave owners were black. I forget his name, but anyway, man. I mean, I don't want to delve too deep into that. But I just like to talk about this stuff because there's such of a cherry picking of our history that a lot of people just don't know about. And I really wish people would educate themselves and go back into I mean, the information is there. I've done it myself, and I'm currently doing it. But I've always been a patriotic guy. I mean, I probably wear it even more now than when I did when I was coming up. But my elders, they would always remind me, be thankful for what you have because these brothers here, they went through it, and that's why I try to focus on what I have and what I have to be thankful for. And not focus too much on what I don't have because, like I said, I live up here in New York City, so I see the devastation. I see people just strung out and don't have a pot to piss in, and just a lot of these people should be taken care of elsewhere, But you know, at the end of the day, I mean, you gotta want it too. I mean, but that's another can of worms there. But yeah, man, I just wanted to touch on the Buffalo Soldiers, man, because you know it's these guys, these brothers, they should be remembered. And I'm glad that they had this website, and I'm glad that they have the museum, and I'm sure you know people go there all the time to pay their respects for their contribution and what they did fighting alongside each other. And like I said, it had to been it wasn't hard, it wasn't easy times, I can tell you that right now. I mean, it's never easy for any soldier. You know, my brother, he's and I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but he's currently stationed in Bahrain right now, and like I said, he's going to be going to Korea after that, and then he'll be done. But I just want to, just salute to all of my, our brothers and sisters in uniform serving in our military now, and just thank you, man. I mean, we don't like I said. I mean, we live in such a privileged world. I mean, the United States, it's the first world, is it's a privileged world, man, and all these people who it's just so much negativity floating around, and I always say, man, take your behind to a poor place, a third world country where people don't even know where their next meal is going to come from. When you got people out here who are just in different countries, that's one reason why I'm so thankful to be an American, because you know you have so many people of all walks of life from different nations who are breaking their backs to get here, you know, illegally, of course. I mean, I'm not for that, but the sentiment of that our country, it really is a good place. It's a great place, regardless of what people say. And it's so many people, and and I've met people from communist countries and stuff like that, people who are struggling and stuff like that. They know what that stuff looks like, and that's why they want to come here. And then they see some of this stuff kind of rising up here, and they're not for it, so they know what the struggle looks like. So I've met some people from Africa. I met some people from primarily when I was still in Virginia. I met some people from Ghana. I met a guy from Guinea. I met a guy from Equatorial Guinea, one of the most corrupt governments in the world. I've recently learned about it. I learned about what was his name, Francisco Nguema, and his family is still running that country today. I mean, it's just not good, but like I said, man, I'm thankful. I'm thankful to be an American. I'm lucky to be American. I tell people all the time, I hit the lottery one time in my life, only once. Hopefully I can hit it again. But the one and only time I hit the lottery was December 10th, 1987, in Richmond, Virginia, when I was born. I was born an American. That was the one and only time I hit the lottery. And I can't say anymore, man. I can't praise it enough, man. I just want to thank what these guys did, and all the soldiers, man, because I mean we had soldiers of all racial backgrounds who served in our military. We had Japanese, we had Asians, we had Hispanic, had some Islanders, Africans. I mean everybody, man. I mean Caucasians. It was really a collective in terms of brotherhood of people who lived in what they fought for, what they lived for, and ultimately what they died for. And I can't thank them enough, man. And thank you to the Buffalo Soldiers and all of our men and women who are currently serving in our military right now, man. So just thank you, thank you, thank you. But I rambled long enough, man. It's your boy Quiz Bleak. Another one for the archives. 31 cents at it. I'm out, y'all, and see you next time. Os.